Alright, what's happening, guys? So in today's video, I want to talk about using live shrimp as bait. Now, obviously, this is going to seem like some pretty basic stuff for most of you watching this video, but lately I have a lot of you guys, particularly on my Facebook Reel comments and on my TikTok comments, that are clearly a little bit newer to saltwater fishing. Maybe you're new to fishing in this area and you kind of have an idea, but you're just looking for some pointers, or maybe you're new to fishing in general and have absolutely no idea where to begin. As the saying goes, everything eats shrimp. It's by far one of the most effective saltwater baits that you could possibly use to catch a huge variety of different species in pretty much any saltwater location that you go to. So what I want to do in this video is I want to go over with you guys the different ways that you can rig up a live shrimp, and I also want to discuss the different scenarios in which you might want to use each of those different rigging methods in order to most effectively target a certain species or most effectively fish a certain area or a certain set of conditions. If you don't know what a shrimp looks like, this is a shrimp. I'm just screwing with you guys. This is an artificial shrimp, obviously. Particularly, this is a voodoo shrimp, one of my favorite artificial shrimps to throw around. So if you guys are looking for a good artificial, I highly recommend this one. You can get these in a variety of different weights and sizes. The action on the tail on these is pretty good, and this is also one of the more realistic looking shrimp lures that you can get. But what I'm doing with this today is I'm going to use this as a prop to show you guys how you can hook a live shrimp. And actually, let me grab this lighter color here because it'll be a little bit easier to show you guys. Actually, this one still has a little bit of water in the tail. I just fished this the other day. Guess what? Didn't catch anything, so I have no new content for you guys. That's why I'm sitting here filming a how-to video. You're welcome. Okay, so anyway, let's pretend that this is a real shrimp. We're going to be talking about two different areas that you can hook this guy. The first one's going to be through the tail, and the second one's going to be right here behind the head in what's called the horn. Now, if you look at a live shrimp, you're going to notice that they have these two huge eyeballs hanging off the side of their head, and right behind that, inside of the horn, you're going to have this dark patch right here. You don't want to hook them through that dark patch because you're immediately going to kill that bait. And you'll want this thing to stay alive. You want it to be down there kicking around. That action is what's going to draw those fish in and get their attention. So in order to hook this, if you look right in front of that dark patch between it and the eyeballs, you have a light spot, and that's where we're going to put that hook. So I've got a little circle hook here. This is a size number 1 circle hook. We're going to talk more about different hooks you can use for different methods here in just a sec, but I'm going to demonstrate to you guys where you're going to want to hook this. So if you look at that dark patch, come just in front of it behind the eyeballs, and again, you're going to not want to go too deep with this for the same reason that you will kill that shrimp. So come in just underneath the crest of the horn between that dark patch and the eyeballs, just like that. And that is literally all you have to do to horn hook a live shrimp, and now that's going to be ready to throw out there and catch a fish. Now, when it comes to the tail hooking method, there's going to be a couple things you'll notice when looking at a live shrimp. The first thing is that hard exoskeleton is going to extend all the way down his back and into his tail, but the underside is going to be a lot softer and less well protected. The other thing that you'll notice is, much like this voodoo shrimp, a real shrimp is going to have this segmented tail, meaning his tail is going to be broken up into different hard sections with softer joints in between. So when it comes to putting this on a hook, I'll always hook from the bottom up on the tail. And the reason that I do that is because I want that barb facing upwards, so it has the highest likelihood of hooking a fish in the mouth when it comes in and grabs this shrimp. But the other thing to note about that segmented tail is you're going to have these hard exoskeletal segments, but in between them, you'll have those soft joints. And I see a lot of people hooking through the soft joints. The reason that I don't do that is because when a fish comes in and grabs the head of this shrimp, it's just gonna rip the hook right out of that soft joint. So what I typically will do is I'll actually take my hook and I'll push it right through one of those hard segments so it's embedded in the exoskeleton. And that way it's a lot harder for a fish to simply rip this off of the hook without actually getting the hook stuck in his mouth. So in practice, this is what that's gonna look like. So you guys can see that I took the hook and I pushed it through one of those hard exoskeletal segments rather than through the joint. And also something to note here is that I pushed it all the way through so that barb is extremely exposed. So when a fish comes in and grabs this, it is guaranteed to get the barb of that hook set into his mouth, and that's exactly what we're looking for. So those are the two ways that you're almost always going to see me hooking a live shrimp. Now what I want to do is I want to go over with you guys in what specific scenarios you might want to use one of those options over the other. So the easiest way that I can describe this to you guys is if you take a look at this shrimp that I have horn hooked here, at how beautifully natural he looks suspended up here in the water column, versus this guy that I have hooked through the tail that looks completely unnatural dangling vertically in the water column. So if I'm fishing a live shrimp suspended anywhere up here in the water column off the bottom, that's when I'm going to use that horn hook method to give them the most natural presentation possible. But there's something else going on here too, and this is what's going to be key to getting those fish keyed in on the shrimp and getting their attention, and that's the fact that his tail is still free and doesn't have a hook through it. If you know anything about how a shrimp swims, it's not like a fish where they just flutter their tail and move straight through the water head first. What this guy's actually gonna do is he's gonna kick that tail forward and thrust himself backwards. And when they do that, it's extremely abrupt, and they make almost like this like clacking sound as they shoot themselves through the water, and there's a jet of water that comes out behind them as they propel themselves along. And that tail being free is going to allow him to continue to do that and make all that motion and all that noise, and that's what's gonna get those fish's attention. So any opportunity that I get to fish a shrimp horn hooked, that's usually the method that I'm going to use. Now, a couple things I want to make note of here real quick. First thing being, can I fish the shrimp down here on the bottom while having them hooked through the horn? And the answer is absolutely yes, I can. However, if you're going to do this, be careful not to go too big on the size of your hook. Typically when I'm fishing live shrimp, I'm only ever going to use a size 1 or a size 2. And one of the reasons for that is if you go too big on this, if you've got like a size 5/0 4x strength hook, that's going to be a lot more weight, and that paired with the current pulling on the line up above this is going to have a tendency to try to drag that shrimp across the bottom, and that's not going to be a natural presentation. Whereas if you've got this small light hook, it's going to be a lot easier for that shrimp to stay upright and look as natural as possible for those fish. So I think you guys can probably see where this is going, and this is a scenario when you can go ahead and switch over to that tail hook. If you plan on fishing them down here on the bottom, having them hooked to the tail is going to be a lot more effective at not pulling them over onto his side and just dragging them along. The only thing about that tail hook is what we discussed a second ago, where he's not going to be able to flick that tail as effectively, and his action's not going to be as good for those fish. So typically what you guys will see me do if I'm fishing him on a bare hook is I will still horn hook him just like this, and I'll drop him to the bottom and then lift him up just like an inch or two. And that way he's still down here in the strike zone on the bottom, but technically he's suspended in the water column and has that nice, beautiful, natural presentation hooked through the horn. Now, there is one more scenario that I want to discuss here with this, and that is if you're using not a naked hook, but a jig like this. Now, this is a bird of prey sheepshead jig. Here soon, we're going into wintertime, we're going to be using a lot of these on the channel. You guys are going to see bird of prey coming up quite a bit. So this is what's called a knocker jig, or just simply a sheepshead jig, and this actually has 3/4 of an ounce of lead molded directly onto the shank of the hook. And the way that these are designed to be fished on the bottom is they will settle down there on the bottom just like that, with the point of the hook facing upwards. So when you're using a weighted jig, you've got to be careful at how you hook these shrimp, because this is the scenario where if you horn hook the shrimp and then this settles down here on the bottom like that, now that shrimp is stuck laying on his side or laying upside down, and that looks absolutely not natural whatsoever. Now, if you're fishing this suspended in the water column, then you can get away with it. That works just fine. But specifically, if you are fishing this on the bottom, this is a scenario when you would want to use that tail hook method, because as that jig settles down there on the bottom and you've got the hook pushed through the bottom of the tail up out the top, now that shrimp is going to sit upright down there on the bottom and have a natural presentation. All right, so last thing that I want to talk about here, you guys will notice if you take a look at the sheepshead jig that this is designed with a J hook built into it rather than a circle hook. And the reason for that is these are designed specifically to fish for sheepshead, which have an incredibly hard mouth with lots of teeth, where a circle hook just isn't as effective as a J hook. You need this J hook to be able to get a good hook set into the top of the fish's mouth. And it just so happens that live shrimp are an excellent sheepshead bait. So the reason that I bring this up is because the type of hook that you use to hook your live shrimp is going to be dictated by the species that you are targeting. So pretty much anything other than sheepshead is when I'm going to use a circle hook, especially if I'm targeting like redfish, speckled trout, any of the kinds of snapper, like anything like that that has a really large mouth and not a lot of teeth. A circle hook is going to work great for. It's going to be quite effective at getting down into the fish's throat and then pulling and setting into the side of his mouth exactly like it's supposed to. However, with those sheepshead having such hard mouths, that's when you're going to want to use a J hook. So you can use a bird of prey sheepshead jig just like this one. I highly recommend bird of prey. They're extremely durable, very good quality jigs. But if you're doing like a free line, or you want to do like a split shot rig or something, I really, really like these Owner mosquito hooks. These ones are a size number 2. Actually, my buddy Chris over at HOOKCRAFT, check him out on YouTube. He's the one that got me hooked on these Owner brand mosquito hooks. These are excellent for sheepshead. You can use the smaller ones like size number 8, size number 10 for collecting pinfish to use as bait. They work great for bluegill, like huge variety of different species. But these size number 2 ones specifically are really good for catching sheepshead on, and they perfectly fit a nice live shrimp. And that is about it. So hopefully you guys found this video interesting and enjoyable. If you did, let me know down below in the comments. I can already guarantee I'm gonna have some hater down there.
This guy talks too much.
Yeah, you know what, buddy? Thank you so much for your valuable feedback. I greatly appreciate it, and I'll take it into consideration when producing future content just for you. Thank you guys so much. We'll see you on the next video.